Jason walked alone across the dry red hills of planet Cyrenine, where the sun burned hot and the wind blew sand in every direction. The ground was cracked. The sky was pale, and the only sound was the crunch of his boots on the ground. He was searching for old tech pieces from the war ruins that lay scattered across the zone. He had no one to talk to, no one to wait for, and no one who cared where he went or why. Then one day, near the broken shell of a crashed drone ship, Jason heard something strange. A soft cry, like a whimper. It was not human, it was high and shaky, and full of fear. He followed the sound through a tight path, between fallen metal beams and broken panels, until he found her. She was small, with wide glowing eyes, pale green skin, and short soft hair like silver moss. She looked no older than 10 in human years, and her thin hands trembled as she held a cracked water pod. Jason knelt down slowly, his voice calm and warm. "Hey, easy, I'm not here to hurt you. You all right?" She blinked at him, not sure if he was real. Then she looked away, ashamed and scared. She tried to run, but her foot caught on metal, and she fell with a soft cry. Jason moved fast and caught her before she hit the ground. He saw then that her ankle was bruised, and her clothes were torn, as if she had been hiding for days. He took her back to his small camp, gave her water, wrapped her foot, and offered food. She didn't speak at first, just stared at him with those big glowing eyes. After some time she spoke, her voice like music, but heavy with sorrow. "I ran away. They wanted to bond me to someone. I do not know. I was afraid. I didn't want it." Jason didn't know much about her culture, but he could tell she was alone and scared, and had no one to help her. Over the next few days, she followed him everywhere. Like a shadow, she watched how he worked, fixed pots, cooked simple meals, and sat quietly near the fire at night. She asked questions about stars, about human jokes, about why he never smiled much. He told her a little about Earth, about how war had taken his old life away, and now he just searched through ruins to forget. She listened closely, and never judged. One night, while the fire crackled and the wind howled through the metal bones of the wreck, she sat close beside him, her shoulder brushing his. She looked up at him with serious eyes, her voice small but clear. "I want to stay with you always. You make me feel safe, like I belong." Jason turned to her with a soft laugh, not cruel, but gentle and kind. He shook his head. "You're still a kid, little star. Come back when you're older, and we'll talk." She blinked, then frowned, then smiled in a way that made something stir deep in his chest. "I will," she said simply. "I promise. I will return for you when I am ready," Jason said. Nothing, just watched her eyes glowing softly like twin moons. Her hand brushed his, and for a moment, the air felt strange, charged with something old and powerful. Then she stood, walked into the shadows, and was gone. He looked for her the next morning, searched the hills, the ruins, the dry riverbed, but she was nowhere, not even a footprint in the dust, only the empty camp and a silver leaf she had worn in her hair, placed gently on his seat. Jason picked it up, held it to the light, and sighed. He didn't know what had happened or where she had gone, but he knew in his heart that the promise she made was not just words. Years passed, and Jason never forgot her. He tried to push her memory away, tried to live a normal life, move to other jobs on other planets, speak to other people. But no one ever looked at him the way she had. No one ever listened to him with eyes full of stars and heart full of quiet fire. He started to wonder if maybe she had died, or maybe she never really existed. Maybe she was just something the desert gave him once before taking her back. But deep down, Jason knew the truth. She had changed him, left a mark in his soul, and no matter how long it took, she would come back. And when she did, he would know, he would feel it, in the wind, in the dust, in the firelight when it danced just right. He would feel it in his chest, the promise in the dust, still waiting to be kept. The station lights flickered under the evening sky of Vexa Prime, a far-off outpost built on metal cliffs, where human workers salvaged ancient tech from the wrecked surface of the world below. In the middle of the noise and the heat and the endless shifts, a man named Jason worked quietly, his face older, his hands scarred, his eyes distant and calm. He no longer searched for treasure or dreams. He only moved from task to task with a calm heart and a quiet mind. He had stopped believing in miracles long ago, stopped waiting for promises made under stars. He no longer thought of soft voices or glowing eyes or silver leaves left in the wind. But still, when the wind blew just right, or when the sky burned red at dusk, a part of him felt the past, like a shadow, just out of reach, like a name half spoken in sleep. That evening, the warning alarm screamed across the outpost. The guards scrambled to their stations, drones lifted into the sky, and workers ducked behind steel crates. Someone shouted, "Incoming unidentified vessel, no code, no signal, approaching fast from the east tower." The sky tore open as a sleek black ship pierced the clouds, moving like lightning, wrapped in silence. It landed hard, shaking the ground with its force. Before anyone could move, the hatch hissed open, and smoke poured out from inside, and then she stepped forward, tall, graceful, silent, her armor smooth and bright, her eyes glowing with power, and her face both alien and beautiful, in a way that stopped the world around her. Every human near the ship froze, unsure if they should attack, speak or run, but she walked past them, like they were not even there. Jason stood frozen near a loading bay, his heart pounding hard without reason. Something deep inside him screamed her name, though his lips could not form the sound. His legs moved without thought as he stepped toward the main walkway, drawn forward like a compass pulled by the stars, and then she turned her head and looked straight at him through the smoke, through the soldiers, through time. Her eyes locked onto his, and the years vanished, the ruins vanished, the silence of her absence broke like glass under heavy boots. She whispered his name, not with her mouth, but with her mind, and Jason felt it like fire in his veins, like a voice calling him home. Her steps stopped just before the commander of the guard, a tall man with sharp eyes and a tighter grip on his pulse rifle. "State your purpose," the commander said, hands raised, voice firm, weapons ready around him. She answered calmly, "I seek the human called Jason. He is here. I have returned for him." No threat in her voice, no anger, no fear, just truth, like steel and ice. The commander frowned and said, "We do not give away workers to unknown visitors, and we do not allow alien ships to land without warning." Jason stepped forward before he even thought about it, his voice shaky but strong. "I know her," he said. "She is not a threat. The alien girl who vanished, she came back, just like she promised." The commander looked at Jason, then at the woman, and slowly lowered his weapon. The others followed suit, though their eyes still burned with fear and doubt. The woman stepped closer, her armor catching the light, her eyes softening. As she reached out a hand, Jason did not move, only stared as she said, "You told me to return when I was older. I have grown, and I have never forgotten you. I crossed worlds to stand before you again." Jason touched her hand, and his fingers met warmth, not cold, not metal, not magic, just warmth, real and steady, like the heat of a long memory finally waking. "What do you want?" he asked. Not harsh, not soft, just real. She smiled the way she once did long ago, when her smile was too big for her face, but now it was perfect, and still full of fire. "I want what was promised. I want the chance to claim the one who waited." Jason did not answer right away. His breath caught somewhere between fear and wonder. He saw the girl he had once saved, and the woman who now stood tall because of it. Behind them whispers grew, workers talking, guards watching, drones recording, but none of that mattered. The air around them felt thick with something old, something powerful, like the desert wind, once again wrapping around them both like a silent promise, still alive. And then a sound split the air, a strange pulse, a deep hum that made the metal floor tremble. Another ship entered orbit, darker, faster, more dangerous, and the alien girl looked up with fire in her eyes. "They have come," she said, "not for peace, not for talk. They want to take me back before the bond is made, before the right can be claimed." Jason stepped beside her, not with fear but with choice, and he said then, "We better move before they find us." And together they ran into the smoke, into the shadows, into a future that waited just beyond the edge of memory and dust. The shadows of Vexa Prime stretched long as the sun dipped behind the jagged cliffs, and Jason followed the alien girl through narrow paths and hidden gates once meant for war, now used for escape. Her name was Araya, though he had not spoken it out loud in years. It sat in his chest like a spark, waiting for breath, and now with every step that spark burned brighter. Her movements were quick and silent, her senses sharp like the wind itself whispered to her where to go. They slipped into a forgotten chamber beneath the old mining decks, where cracked walls hummed with old tech, and silence ruled over dust. Jason leaned against a rusted panel, his breath heavy, his thoughts racing. He looked at her and saw no trace of the small, frightened girl who once followed him through ruins. This was a warrior, a leader, her armor marked with symbols. He could not read her face, calm but full of purpose. She turned to him, her eyes softer now, and said, "They will not stop until they take me back. They fear what I have chosen. They fear you, because you are not one of them." Jason nodded slowly, still unsure of what he had been pulled into, still trying to understand why her voice shook. Something deep in him, he asked, "Why me? Why come all this way? For someone like me, I am just a worker now. I am no one." Araya stepped closer, her hand rising, not to strike or command, but to touch her fingers, brushing the side of his face with care. "You are the only one who saw me as a person, not a future bride. Not a tool, not a danger. You protected me when I was weak, and I never forgot. I trained for years for this day to return and complete the bond with my own choice, not theirs." Jason stepped back, confused, unsure what any of it meant. The bond? What bond? What choice? He asked, and her voice grew quiet, not sad but steady. "In our culture, a bond made without the will of both is hollow. When I fled, I broke the old right, but I learned the path of the warrior, and earned the right to return and choose for myself. If I can survive the right of claim with you, we may stand as equals before my people. If not, they will take me and erase what I remember of you. He stared at her, the words heavy in his mind and heart. The right of claim sounded ancient and brutal, and yet he saw no fear in her eyes, only hope, only fire. He asked, what does it mean survive together, through the old wilds of my world for 7 suns? No weapons, no ships, only instinct and trust. If we fail, they win. If we pass, they cannot stop us. Jason laughed, not with joy but disbelief. I have not fought in years. I am slower now, weaker. What makes you think I can do this? She smiled again, not mocking, not proud, just full of truth. Because you never gave up on me, and I will never give up on you. She stepped forward and held out a small device, a sphere, pulsing with soft light. The moment we activate this, they will know the right has begun, and no one can interfere. He looked at her, then at the device, then at his own hands, calloused and tired but still steady. He thought of the promise made in silence, the nights he waited without meaning to the mornings he hoped without reason. He took the device in his hand and nodded. Do it. Araya pressed her hand over his, and the sphere flared with a beam of light that shot upward, through the rocks, through the station, through the clouds above. In that moment, alarms screamed outside, footsteps rushed down the corridors, voices yelled in panic, but none could reach them now. The right had begun. The chamber around them shifted, walls sliding apart, revealing a drop into darkness far below. Jason looked down and felt fear grip him, but Araya took his hand and said, we fall together, or we rise together. Either way, I will not let go. They jumped, the wind roaring around them, their bodies spinning, their hearts pounding. They landed hard in a world of green fire, and sky dust and ancient roots, the wilds of Araya's home, untamed and full of life, both beautiful and cruel. Jason stood slowly, pain in his side but breath still in his lungs. Araya stood beside him, already watching the trees, already hearing the distant call of something massive, something hunting. The rite had begun, and with it the old bond between human and alien burned bright again, not of chains or laws, but of something stronger, choice and memory, and promise that no distance or time could break. And as the first night fell, they moved forward, step by step, deeper into the unknown, hand in hand, heart to heart, ready to face whatever the wild would throw at them. The jungle of Araya's world was alive with strange sounds and shifting lights. Trees twisted like spirals into the sky, their leaves glowing faint blue under the twin moons. Beasts with glowing eyes moved through the underbrush, but kept their distance from the pair who had dared enter the wild during the rite. Jason breathed hard, with every step, the air thick and wet. His muscles ached from the fall, but he followed Araya without complaint. Her movements sharp and smooth, her presence calm, like she knew the land was watching. They camped near a hollowed root where the heat was less cruel, and the wind brought in the scent of fruit and wildflowers. Jason sat on a stone, catching his breath, while Araya stood near the edge, her gaze locked on something far away. Jason asked, what is it you see? She answered, without turning. They are close. They followed us through the gap. They want to end the rite before it truly begins. Jason stood and walked to her side, scanning the jungle with tired eyes. He asked, why do they hate the rite so much? She turned to face him, her voice low. Because if we finish the rite together, I will have full claim to choose you, and they cannot stop it. They lose power, they lose control, and worse, they fear what will happen if our bond proves stronger than tradition. Jason looked at her, his thoughts running fast. He asked, what happens if we fail? What happens to you? She hesitated, then spoke quietly. They take me back, remove my memory of you, replace it with a crafted bond, someone from the high blood, someone I never chose. Jason clenched his fists, not from anger at her people, but at the idea of her being broken like that. He had seen what forced bonds did to people in the war in the old colonies. It never ended well. That night, they ate dried fruit and small roots roasted over the heat stones, and as the moons rose, Araya sat beside him and spoke softly about her training, the cold caves, the long nights, the battles fought in silence, her rise through the ranks without a family name, only strength and fire in her heart. Jason listened without speaking, every word pulling him deeper into the truth of her journey and what she had risked to come back. Before they slept, Araya placed her hand over Jason's chest and said, I do not expect you to carry me through this. I only ask you walk beside me. Jason looked at her and nodded, because he would never let her walk alone. Not now, not ever. The wind grew still. The stars blinked in sleep, took them without warning. But peace did not last long. A crack of branches, a sharp pulse in the ground, and Jason woke with a gasp. Araya already on her feet, blades drawn, her body tense. Jason stood grabbing the nearest stone, a shape stepped from the trees, tall and wrapped in black armor, its mask sharp like bone, its voice thick with venom. You should have stayed lost. Araya, the right belongs to the blood, not the broken. Araya stood firm, her voice steel. I earned the right, I claim the right by fire, and mark, this is not your path. The hunter laughed, cold and cruel. You run with a human, a weak thing, who will fail you and cost you everything. Jason stepped forward, not knowing the rules, but knowing courage when it called. He said, I am not here to take from her, only to stand with her. If that scares you, then maybe you are not as strong as you think. The hunter snarled and threw a small orb to the ground. Smoke burst out, burning their eyes. A rock grabbed Jason and rolled them both behind the root wall. Blades flashed in the smoke. Jason heard metal strike, would felt the heat of near misses. Araya moved like lightning, cutting through the dark, but the hunter escaped, melting into the jungle. Like shadow, we have to move now, she said, voice sharp. They will not wait for dawn. They will strike in pairs. They will poison the path. Jason nodded, rubbing his eyes, and followed her deeper into the wild. Their path now, a race against those who would see the bond destroyed. They climbed cliffs, crossed rivers, avoided traps. Both natural and made by cruel hands. Jason's feet bled, his legs shook, but still, he moved, never asking to stop, never asking to turn back, because he had seen her bleed too. Seen her fight for him, even when she had no reason to, as the sky began to lighten. Araya stopped near a hill covered in white moss and pointed to a stone marker. This is one of the 7 gates. Each one we pass proves our bond. The hunters will try to block the next 6, but if we reach them together, they cannot deny us. Jason touched the stone, warm with ancient power, and said then, let's reach them one by one, no matter what comes. And as the sun rose behind them, they stepped forward side by side into a jungle that had never welcomed love, but now had no choice but to watch it fight back. The second gate rose from the jungle floor, like the bones of a fallen titan covered in moss and glowing vines. The stone was cracked, but the old symbols pulsed faintly with blue light. Each symbol marked a trial of unity, strength, and will. Jason stood before it, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his back. Every step through the jungle had tested his limits, and still Araya pressed on, never slowing, never showing weakness, until now her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the stone, her body stained with cuts, her breath short. Jason noticed the blood on her side seeping through her armor. He reached out without thinking, pulling her close and checking the wound. It was deep, cut by one of the hunter's blades from the last ambush. She tried to hide it, but now her legs were weak and her skin cold. You should have told me, Jason said, his voice quiet, his eyes full of worry. Araya shook her head, her voice soft. I could not stop. Not until we reached the gate. You would have worried more than needed. Jason helped her sit against the stone, then tore a part of his sleeve to bind the wound, his hands shaking but steady enough. Araya winced but did not pull away, her eyes on him the entire time. You always help, she whispered, even when you should not. Jason smiled faintly. I made a promise long ago. I never break promises. Araya rested her head back, her skin pale, her voice slow. The wound is poisoned. They use venom from the iron-winged beast. It slows the heart, if not cleansed. Jason froze, fear tightening in his chest. What do we do? How do I stop it? You need to find the flame fruit, she said, barely above a whisper. It grows on high cliffs where the wind sings and the sun burns. The petals look like fire inside them. Is the seed that burns the poison away. Jason nodded, stood, and looked toward the jagged ridge. In the distance, the sun now sharp and cruel above the trees. He knew the climb would take hours, the path worse than anything yet, but there was no choice. Stay awake, he said, gripping her hand. I will bring it back before the stars rise. She smiled with tired eyes, then slipped into shallow sleep. Jason turned and ran through the jungle, dodging vines, thorns, and roots, the path full of strange sounds and shadows. The higher he climbed, the sharper the rocks, the thinner the air, but he kept moving, blood on his arms, dirt on his face, wind in his ears. He reached the cliff just as the sun dipped low, the flame fruit glowing faintly at the very edge. He climbed with bleeding hands, using roots and jagged cracks. Finally he reached it, pulled one glowing pod free, and held it close, then began the slow, painful climb down the ridge, cutting his leg on a sharp edge, twisting his ankle near the bottom, but never stopping. By the time he reached Araya, again the moons were rising. She was pale, her lips dry, her breathing slow. Jason crushed the fruit, mixed it with water, and fed it to her. Slowly her body shivered, then grew still for a long moment. He feared he was too late then. She gasped, eyes wide as light burst behind them, her body glowing faintly, the poison burning away. You came back, she said, voice weak but smiling. Jason laughed through tears of relief. I told you. I do not break promises. She sat up slowly, strength returning little by little, her fingers wrapping around his arm, tight and warm and full of silent thanks. They stayed there through the night, resting beneath the stone gate, watching the stars move slowly across the sky. When morning came, Araya stood fully healed, though still tired. She pressed her hand to the gate, and Jason did the same. Light burst from the stone symbols. glowing bright as the second gate accepted their unity. Together they had passed another trial together. They had defied the hunters and proven their bond still lived. As they walked forward deeper into the jungle, Jason asked, "How many more gates do we face?" Araya looked at him, her expression strong. "5 more," she said, "each harder than the last, and now the hunters know we are worthy. They will not hold back." Jason nodded and smiled slightly, "Then let them come. We will show them what trust looks like." And so they moved once more through the wild paths of her world, side by side, hearts linked by more than old words or lost time, bound now by blood, by fire, and by the trust no blade could break. The 6th gate was behind them now, and only one remained, the final gate hidden deep within the mountain where the jungle turned to stone and the air grew thin. Jason and Araya climbed the final slope step by step, their bodies bruised, their breath heavy, but their hands never letting go behind them. The jungle was quiet too. Quiet. The hunters had fallen back, waiting, watching, letting the mountain finish the job. Clouds circled the peak like a crown of ghosts, and sharp winds tore across the narrow path. Jason slipped once, a loose stone giving way, but Araya caught his arm and pulled him back, her strength never fading when he needed it most. They reached the upper ridge just as the first snow began to fall, thin and cold but biting like ice blades. Against their skin they found a cave near the top, a place carved long ago by those who created the right, a place where the final trial would begin. Inside the cave, the walls pulsed with light, strange symbols dancing across the surface as if alive. Araya touched them and whispered, "This is where we must stand together and show our hearts." Jason looked around, unsure what was expected. There were no beasts, no hunters, no traps, only silence. Then the mountain shook, a soft rumble that grew louder with each heartbeat, until a door of stone opened, revealing the final gate floating between 2 broken pillars wrapped in silver vines. Jason stepped forward, but Araya stopped him, her voice calm. "If we enter, we cannot leave without passing the test, and if we fail, it is the end." Jason nodded slowly, no fear in his eyes, only quiet fire. They entered the gate together, and the world shifted. The cave faded, the wind vanished, and they stood in a new place, a place made of light and shadow, a place that spoke without sound. Before them stood figures tall and faceless, dressed in glowing robes. Each one held a blade of light and pointed it toward Jason. One stepped forward, and spoke not with words, but with thoughts. "You are not of the blood. You are not chosen. If you step forward, you accept her fate as your own." Jason looked at Araya, her eyes locked on his, and he stepped forward without pause. "I choose her, and I choose this, even if it breaks me." The figure raised its hand, and light burst around them, a storm of memory and pain. Jason saw his own past, felt every failure, every scar, every doubt. His body shook, but he stayed standing. Then the light shifted and showed Araya her past, the cold halls, the cruel voices, the endless nights alone. She cried out once, but Jason held her hand tighter. They stood in the center of the storm, refusing to fall, refusing to let go. Then the final vision came, a future where they walked apart, where Araya was taken back, her mind wiped, her soul chained. Jason on a distant world, alone and broken. That is what the right feared most. Not death, but the death of what could be the bond they had built. The love forged, not by rules, but by choice. Jason shouted into the light, "I do not care about blood. I do not care about law. I care about her, and I will not let her be taken." The figures stepped back, their light dimming one by one, until only darkness remained. Then a soft glow rose around Jason and Araya, warm and golden and full of peace. The final gate had accepted their truth. The light faded, and the cave returned, the mountain silent once more, the silver vines now gone, the gate now still. Jason and Araya stepped out into the cold dawn, and saw the hunters waiting, not with weapons raised, but kneeling, heads bowed. "The right has spoken," one said, his voice hollow. "You have passed, and we will not stop you." Araya looked at Jason, her eyes wide, her body still trembling from the visions, and she whispered, "We did it. We truly did it." Jason smiled, then fell to his knees. The storm had taken more from him than he realized, his strength gone, his breath shallow. Araya caught him, held him close, and called his name again and again, her voice full of fear. He opened his eyes and touched her face softly. "We made it, and I am still here, just tired, just need to sleep." Araya held him tight and whispered, "Then sleep. We are safe, and I will keep you safe." Now they stayed there at the peak of the world, wrapped in silence and warmth. The snow still falling soft and slow, as if blessing their bond with every flake that touched the ground, and the wind whispered a new promise. One not born of dust, but of fire and truth and love that no trial could ever break. The wind carried the scent of dawn, as Araya held Jason in her arms, his body weak but still warm, his heart steady and his breath Slow, her eyes burned with emotion, not from fear, but from the weight of what they had survived. She had trained her entire life to be strong, to be worthy, to be more than the frightened girl who once ran through the ruins with bare feet and hope in her hands. But now she knew that strength alone was not what saved them. It was trust. It was the bond. It was the silent promise they made across stars and years and pain, a promise that now echoed across the peak, where the last gate once stood glowing with power before fading into nothingness. The hunters remained silent, watching from the ridge, their weapons lowered, their eyes unsure of what they had witnessed. Then, from the clouds above, a new ship descended, not with fire or threat, but with light streaming from its wings. It landed near the edge of the cliff, and out stepped the elders of Araya's people, their robes woven from starlight, their faces marked with silver lines of time. They did not speak as they approached the pair. Instead, they stopped at a respectful distance, waiting for Araya to stand. She rose slowly, helping Jason to his feet, his legs unsteady but his grip firm. She faced the elders without bowing, her voice strong. "We have completed the rite, not with power, not with pride, but with choice and truth. We ask no reward, only that our bond be honored and never questioned again." The oldest of the elders stepped forward, his eyes deep as gravity itself, and he spoke with quiet respect. "The rite has not been completed in over 300 cycles. Few dare to face it, and even fewer survive it. You came with a human, and yet stood before the gate with no fear. You faced the storm of memory, and made your hearts known, without shame or retreat." He turned to Jason, and studied him, not with cold judgment, but with honest curiosity. "You are not of our blood, yet you held fast in the face of trials that have broken warriors. You protected one of ours, not as a prize, but as a partner. Speak now, and tell us what you seek." Jason looked at Araya, then at the sky, then at the faces that had come to decide their fate. "I do not seek a throne or a name. I only seek her, the one who came back for me after I thought I had been forgotten. She is enough." The elder nodded and raised his hand. The light of the mountain gathered around them, spinning like soft fire, wrapping both Araya and Jason in its glow. Then, with a wordless pulse, the light marked them both, a sign not of ownership, but of unity, a seal that would be recognized across all worlds and castes and clans. No one could undo it, no law could break it. It was done. The hunters stepped back and vanished into the mist. Their duty ended, their cause silenced. The elders returned to their ship, leaving behind a robe of honor folded and placed at Araya's feet, not for war, not for politics, but for peace and recognition. Jason remained at the peak, watching the clouds move slowly across the sky. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, her voice soft. "Do you still think you are just a worker, just a man with no place in the stars?" He smiled with tired eyes. "Maybe I was, but not anymore. Not now, not after you." They stayed there until the sun rose high, warming their skin, melting the last bits of snow as life slowly returned to the land below. Creatures moved once more. The jungle breathed again, the world no longer watching but accepting. When they returned to the village at the base of the mountains, no one dared speak against them. The people bowed, not from fear, but from respect. Children ran to follow them. Songs were sung in the old tongue, songs of fire and dust and love found again. In the ashes of Tima, home was given to them, small and quiet, with walls of glass and stone, a garden where the wind always whispered, and a sky that stretched forever. Araya hung her blades on the wall and smiled at Jason. "This is enough," he said. "This is everything." Seasons passed, and the story of their rite spread across the stars. Some doubted, some believed, but none could change what had been sealed that day, on the mountain, in the heart of fire and snow and choicened. When the stars were bright, and the moons full, Araya would sit beside Jason and hold his hand, and remind him that, even if the world forgets, she never would, because once she was just a girl in the dust, and now she was home with a human who waited, and the bond they built would never break. Not in war, not in time, not in memory, not ever.